you're going to see about 80 to 90% opening ranges. Anywhere from 2 to 3 bigs. Doug, from my understanding, plays about a 2.2 big blind opening strategy. I haven't seen what Daniel's is yet. Last night he was using 2.5. Both of those are fine. Optimal is closer to what Doug uses. You're going to see throughout this entire match that Doug is playing a very fundamentally solid strategy. He has put in the work to and is coming from a background that's game theory oriented. Whereas I'm pretty sure Daniel has also been putting in some work in the GTO streets, but as we know, he is way more on the live side. So yeah, or not live, but like on the optimal tricky street side. So you're going to see 80 to 90% opening ranges. You're going to see about a defending range of 60 to 70%. 3-bets also get pretty hyphy in this game. And so you're going to be seeing a lot of pots. And what's going to feel, I think, weird for a lot of people who might be used to watching Full Ring or Six Max or play either of those is that the amount of aggression that comes on the turn and river is really intense. We get a check raise all in. Daniel with the flush draw. Doug with 2 pair wins a $92,000 pot. Don't mind the check raise by Daniel. Doug is obviously snapping it off. So Q1 for Team Polk. That's going to be huge on the comeback trail. That's what's crazy about the stakes of this challenge. $1 million is what, 25 buy-ins? And that is very little buy-ins in heads up, no limit hold'em, especially in an aggressive dynamic. And so it's possible we see multiple $1 million swings in this challenge, which is why it's so epic. And because these dudes are just going to want to shit talk about it the entire time. Anyway, 3-bet pot. We see Daniel doing his first size down. He bets about $1,700 or $1,650 into a $8,300 pot. Doug, somewhat similarly on another lockdownish board texture, bets small. Both called. Both right-hand table, we don't get a board texture change. Left-hand table, this is a very texture changey card. Doug likes to play a check. You're going to see lots of checking as the aggressor on board texture changes, no matter what the game. That's what game theory says. Both tables, we see a big bet on the turn from Negreanu. And now on both tables, we're still 100 big blinds deep. So we're in the either check raise all in or check call with an SPR, stack to pot ratio of about 1 on the river, or I guess a little less on the left table. Calls on both tables. We have 2 $30,000 pots on our hands happening simultaneously. All in.
Snap call
with the straight. D-Neg's got the set. You cannot fault him for that. That is a very I think that's a fine shove. Maybe someone can let me know if that's wrong, but he's got Daniel flopped a set, Doug flopped a straight. Doug wins $150. Oh, sorry, no, he wins half that. $80,000 in one pot. Absolutely epic. And is the Donger emote still exist?
You know what we really need? Get your trucks out, right? So he's gonna back the truck up.
Do we have a truck emote? Can the Upswing team get us a truck emote made, please, as soon as possible, so that we can back that truck up? Daniel makes a small bet on the river with a flush in a spot where Doug has so many hands he can call with. Gets called though, so can't blame. Maybe that was some white magic. Doug had like 2 pair that ends up calling the river. Daniel was able to figure it out. But Daniel wins the left-hand table. Back to the action. Doug sizes down from his sizings that he's been using, which is an adjustment. I think the first adjustment that we're seeing sizes down to about $3,800 3-bet. Daniel immediately 4-bets him. This might be some hybrid voodoo magic. We'll see what happens. Doug rips it in his face. Queens versus tens. That is what you call a cooler. And then I would like someone to get their dongers out in the chat, please, as Doug wins. I think our first $100,000 pot, $105,000 going to Doug Polk. Like you don't get to the top of poker, you don't get to the top of YouTube, you don't get to the top of business, like building successful businesses without putting in a metric fuck ton of work. And I think that has taken it for granted by a lot of people who kind of just see his public persona. And the same can be said for Daniel, right? Like maybe Daniel doesn't put as much work into his poker game, but he for sure has put a ton of work into his brand and into like his content and all the ways that he presents himself. So in order to get to the spot that either of these individuals have, you have to give them a massive amount of credit.
For sure.
And then
And that's actually, it started the issue with Doug and Daniel. Daniel had put a tweet out that was about how he could beat 2550 online if he just practiced for 2 weeks. If I study for 2 weeks, I could beat these guys. That's actually what pissed Doug off before anything else even started. This was years ago, where Doug just said, you're kind of disrespecting all these people who work so hard to actually beat those stakes. And he issued some kind of challenge then if Daniel wanted to play somebody. I don't even know if it was him, but that's what started it. So that's Doug just being offended because he's like, I put in so much work, and like my friends put in so much work. You should recognize that and not make these unfounded claims.
I agree. We see a check raise on the turn here by Daniel. Doug bet 2,000. Daniel check raises 3x to about 6,000 on the flush completion. Daniel is going to definitely have a lot of bluffs here, like single diamond hands, like the queen nine of diamonds. That makes literal perfect sense. I'm happy to see Daniel finding bluffs there, right? I think a lot of people were expecting Daniel to show up and just be this weak live reg, but the fact that he's finding like the queen of diamonds check raise bluff on the turn in a bet spot, that shows me that he's really showing up with a game plan. And so as much as we're going to talk that Doug is doing a good job, you also want to be happy that you're seeing Daniel find some spots of aggression. And I'm really excited to see how that continues as the match goes on. I mean, that's what it's going to be like playing the best players in the world at any game. When I'm playing, like, I know myself, and when I'm playing some of the better PLO players, they're just bloodbaths. Speaking of bloodbath, like another 4-bet pot, it is like straight up aggression. And that is where the game is evolving. Like that is what like Sensei says, the solver says that you have to have the ruckus. All in call, ace queen versus queens, another almost $100,000 pot. And Doug scoops it in.
No Barry Greenstein for D-Negs here. Another massive pot. Doug's won 3 for 3.
Sitting there just like seething, like and just seeing these like games running, it is super tilt inducing. And I'm sure like Doug specifically, given how competitive he is, he's like was the best player in the world. And it's like playing NL 25 and like misclicking regging tournaments, and like no matter how controlled you are, that's going to bring tilt to your soul. I believe it. So you're saying you've been playing a lot of poker. What does that look like for you during quarantine? Have you felt yourself getting better? Like, have you felt?
I started studying way more. I was joking that I've been in poker for a long time, but I like find other avenues to make money, or I'll do a podcast, or maybe a little bit of coaching for like really low limit people, stuff like that. And I didn't really put in studying until the pandemic. It literally took being locked in a house with absolutely nothing to do for me to touch a solver. So I'm way behind with that, but I have actually enjoyed it. It's a much more fun game to play when you feel yourself actually progressing instead of just stagnating.
I completely agree. You also get the answers. Speaking of an answer, we're going to see how Doug answers this bet on the river from Daniel. He's betting almost $10,000 into a 12,050 pot. Daniel had nothing. Doug had top 2 pair, chose not to check raise with it on the river. That is something that I'm a little surprised by. River's top 2 pair, it seems as if he figured Daniel was more polar and that he wouldn't be calling a check raise. When I say, okay, translation, when I say if something's a thing, it means like in solver land, if that's something that would show up, if you think that it would be a reasonable strategy. But the Doug wasn't taking a lot of aggression in position on an A-side board, which means he's not going to find a lot of raises on the river. So I don't know if we're going to get a lot of induction from the flush. Seems a little bit better to just be able to bluff more, right, and bet bigger. But we see the flush coming in on the turn on the left-hand table. We see the 3/4 pot sizing, and then get a call. What do you think is going to happen on the river here, Jamie?
I could see Doug jamming. What do you think?
This is a good spot to jam. Daniel's been taking a lot of aggression, and he should be betting river at some frequency, so you are going to get some check rips.
Just a call. Hand too good to jam.
Pair of jacks, 1 pair. This is a back the truck up moment if I've ever seen it. He says absolutely no.
Nice hand. Yep.
And we have a special guest for all of you that I was speaking earlier. Mike Brady, Upswing's president.
I think you promoted him.
VP. I'm okay. You're president of my heart. VP of Upswing Poker here in the chat to help us with some commentary. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing well. How are you guys? How are you enjoying the action so far?
It's good.
I love Ruckus. That's actually in my LinkedIn profile, and so this match has been great.
Yeah, a lot of Ruckus so far. A lot of 100K pots, more than I expected. It's good stuff.
Oh, so they are allowed to reset.
They didn't specifically talk about anything, but I think it's pretty standard for heads-up challenges. Like you tend to reset. I'm gonna mute myself for a second, so I'm not giving you guys all this feedback.
No worries. So Daniel finds probably what looks like a good sizing on the ace jack board in the 3-bet pot. Doug has to decide how he wants to continue. Probably not going to raise a ton. Turn is a 4 of clubs.
Any better now?
Yes, that is better.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That is much better.
Yeah, so one reason I wanted to hop on, well, we got a kind of a lull in the, or actually no, not really a lull in the action. We have a quarter pot bet on the ace jack board from Daniel. This is a double barrel, it looks like, in a 3-bet pot.
Yes. He bet 1/5 flop, betting on this quarter on the turn.
That's been Daniel's MO so far in these heads-up challenges. We've also watched a little bit of his game when he was playing other people, and he seemed to be really like that small bet. See what he wants to do on this river. Goes for 12K into 16. With the nut flush, that's going to win the pot. Second nut flush.
Seems that hand was well played by Daniel.
Definitely.
Especially because we love to see 3-bet pots like the one on the left here, starting the hand over 150 big blinds deep on the 9-10 jack 2-tone. Daniel finds a check. He's been finding lots of c-bets on these board textures, so something of note that he found a check. Have another 3-bet pot on the right, queen 7-5 2-tone. Daniel's betting the 3/4 sizing as normal. Gets a fold on the right, and on the left we see Doug betting small. Does not have to bet big, because when Daniel checks there, he is relinquishing his top end of range advantage at some frequency. That's a lot of words. Doug doesn't have to bet a lot because Daniel's not going to have a lot of good hands. On this turn, though, Brady, what do you think is going to happen?
I tuned out for a sec. So did this go D-negs 3-bet and 3-bet and C-bet?
No, D-negs 3-bet, check calls 40% flop.
Gotcha. Well, this is certainly a better, really good board run up for Doug in general.
Yeah, very good.
I mean, Daniel's certainly going to have some 10x here. He's going to occasionally have a flush. But for the most part, Daniel's range is in pretty rough shape. And Doug has a lot of the things. He can have a lot of the things right here.
Exactly, which is why Doug doesn't have to bet the flop very big once Daniel checks in a 3-bet pot. Daniel be tricksy, though, right? Like, that's the thing.
Oh, he's certainly tricky.
Yeah.
Certainly tricky. We saw it with that in the live session. Ooh, and we have, well, that's a well played hand. Clearly well played hand by both players for sure. Doug's flop bet is pretty interesting. I'm not sure everyone would do that, but I how bad can it be to bet middle pair in an open ender?
You probably want to. I think you want to have a decent amount of aggression in that spot too. When opponent has been playing 3-bets with a high c-bet frequency, even on lockdown board textures, Doug probably just is trying to meet X frequency of betting, and that probably is just a mix of a bet.
Yeah. So anyway, about Daniel being tricky, as we see Doug's c-bet in a 3-bet pocket called here on 885. He 3-bet in the live portion of the match. He 3-bet 10-6 suited, got the king 6-6 rainbow board. He c-bet the flop for a 5th pot and then checked the turn, which is a very cagey check on the turn, and ended up getting Doug to blast off, so it worked out perfectly for him. So Doug definitely has to look out for some, I wouldn't necessarily say unorthodox traps, but maybe unorthodox traps throughout this challenge.
I'm going to cut you off real quick. Huge bet here. We have a 3-bet pot. Doug bets flop, bets pot on the turn. Doug is going to have all the overpairs. So he has all the aces, kings, queens, jacks, 10s. Daniel has a little less of them. I don't know who has more 8s. Brady, you'd know better than me. But the full pot on the turn sets up a river ship size, which Doug goes for. No snap call.
No snap, so no quads.
Yeah, no quads.
Daniel certainly has the advantage in 8s here, but
yeah, wow, Doug just has Daniel called the turn with the 7-9 suited, no pair inside straight draw, binks the full house on the river.
I am baffled by that turn call. I'm really, really surprised to see that from Daniel. I'm pretty sure it's, dare I say, not a good play to call that turn. And then Daniel in particular, he seems to be pretty sensitive to making like smart folds and kind of being prudent in the right situations, especially when he's not sure. And I would think someone like him would make that fold there, but I guess he decided to peel a card, and he got punished as much as possible by taking the 9 river. That aspect of it is unlucky, but he probably shouldn't have been there. Interesting, yeah. Looks like Doug has made a slight adjustment. It appears he went from 9-10 to 9-30, which that's some very epic precision. But assuming there's logic behind it, which I'm almost certain there is.
I mean, yeah, I believe it for sure.
I believe he was going 9-10 at the beginning. I could be mistaken on that, but
no, I think you're correct. Doug is a very meticulous poker player, to say it lightly. Anyway, we have a 3-bet pot on the Ace King King board. You do not need to bet big. It is you're just going to have the nuts way more often than your opponent because they didn't 4-bet you, which means they don't have Ace King. So you get to bet small sizing. Daniel calls.
A lot of action right now too on the other table. Daniel probed the turn. Probe is leading the turn after the preflop raiser check back on the flop. He probed the turn on the Queen 6-5-4. Doug raised, and then we got the Queen river after Daniel called. Daniel does check it over.
Say on the second table, we see Doug betting the turn, getting called again. King river now.
Really interesting card.
Yeah, very interesting card.
You would expect a decent amount of chops here.
Nah, Doug just got the deuce 3. Donut low.
Once Doug checks, I would retract that comment. But
No,
he has the range advantage for sure.
But no, I just want to say thanks for hanging out. Your comments are always fun to read. And yeah, this has been fun to watch. Obviously, I'm a fan of Doug. I'm a friend of Doug, so fun for me. Sorry for the DNegs fans in the chat, but it's a long challenge.
Long challenge indeed. Okay, and again, we know that number with the results is not updated yet, but we are, once the dust settles a little bit, I'm going to talk to Doug, find out exactly how much he won or lost this session. I believe he won. Could be wrong about that. And then we'll make sure it gets updated over on that page. Again, upswingpoker.com/HU for Grudge. All right.
Yeah.
Good stuff, guys.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Twitch chat. It's always a pleasure. It's an honor to be able to interact with you. You make my life better.
Such a privilege to see you guys. Such a privilege.
All right. Later, everybody. Have a good night.
Take care.